Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach and I've realized I got more things to do. I put in a couple more issues. The @ sign in front of all variable declarations, or in this case would really just be the parameters, but still to do that because somebody may put in a property name of this, or what would be another one? var event. You shouldn't do that, but because I lowercase those, those would end up being keywords, and we don't want to do that. And so I'm just going to do that namespace or something like that. So we're going to put those in at some point. I put in an issue for generic types. That's the one we're going to be working on in this episode. And I think those are the only things I found. So unfortunately, this is one thing. I love SharpLab, but this is one thing that kind of drives me a little batty, is you get into sometimes, or at least I've seen this connection loss reconnecting. I have no idea why. It just happens sometimes, and then it seems like SharpLab is just toast for some indeterminate amount of time. And the thing is, I love SharpLab. It's a really nice online tool. Whoever creates it, Andrei Shikekin. I apologize if I butchered your name completely. It's over on the right. You may not be able to see it because my name's there, but just go to the site. And it's a great tool, but when I get this, it's like, what happens? If it's because there's issues on the server, I would say the community should get behind this, because it would really help in beefing this up and making it an even better tool. Like you just saw, it just flickered there, and now it's saying connection lost again. I don't know if you noticed that, but go back a little bit in time and you may catch that it just did that. So I was trying to suss this out, and I think the problem is, and I haven't done a generator test just yet, but that we're probably not putting the name in here right of T, like that flattened thing we do in rocks. I need to put all generic types here that are defined, because you can't just have a property suddenly become a generic. Like you can have a method that has its own generics, but a property can't do that. So if there are any open generics on the type, they would be like this. And then you should, and this is what I'm trying to prove here, you should be able to do something like this, and that would work. And then you could deconstruct over generic types, or whatever you want to call it. So that's what we're going to work on in this episode, and see if we can get that to work. Okay. So where am I again? This is number 8. We don't have a 8 fix generic types. Okay. So we're going to do, the first thing is create a test. How many times do I say that? Way too many. And yet here we are. So we're going to do generic generator tests. Okay. Get rid of those. Do that. Public static test. It's framework. Public static async task generate rate when type has generics. Now, used in properties. That's the key, async. Okay. We're going to want another test in here that does something like generate when type has generics not used in properties. Are there any things that we could possibly do differently here? Because you may have something like, where am I? Come back here. You may have something like this, but then you add in a public GUID ID, get set. Okay. And maybe that T is not used on these things. And so the only deconstruction you would have is over the ID thing. And then maybe you have a string here as well. Name. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out here. But the point is, if you had a method here that used the generic, but these didn't, and these weren't here, then your deconstruct technically doesn't have to be generic. Okay. This name would have to still be here. This wouldn't have to be generic. Well, okay, it would. Never mind. It doesn't matter, because even if this isn't generic, you need to say, how did you create it? Even if you said string here. Kind of annoying, because this is a generic type. And so you need to have something to say, it feels funky now that I think about it, but I don't think you can't not handle that. You have to do that. You have to put the generic in there. So if there is an open generic, you need to specify that here. Of course, this starts going down the rabbit hole of constraints as well. Damn it. Don't forget about constraints. Okay, but this is something I ran into with rocks, is that if this T here would have a where T is class, I would almost guarantee I would need to put that on here as well. Maybe, possibly, probably, but I can't tell because the connection is lost. Oh, so many things, so many things. All right, so we don't have to worry about this, okay? But what I do believe we need to have is a test that's going to say type as generics with constraints, okay? All right, so let's just grab something. Wait a minute, no, I did put it, yeah, I did. Okay, I'm just in the wrong spot here. Never mind. I am of babbling. Okay. So let's do the simple one first. Let's say we have test of T. Okay. And this is going to be a T of ID and a T of value. Okay. I really would like if they had, I know this is asking for a lot, but there's a way to say with raw string literals like that. Now, of course, that's not going to work but if there's some way that you could like you do in Markdown, like what this should be, some way to qualify, this is how I want it to look. And that doesn't work. So, oh well. Anyway, because you can do the string syntax on a parameter, and then if you pass a string into it, it will actually highlight it based on is it JSON or XML. Of course, I don't have a C# one just yet, which would be really nice. Okay. So what I think this should be, do I want to put in what I think it should be, or do I just want to put in a blank and see what it's doing wrong? I think what we want to do is just put in a blank first, okay? And you tell me, oh code, and let's put this one in as well. Okay, so here we'll say where T is a class, just some constraint. As I remembered in rocks, there's some constraints that you do put on and some that you don't, and whatever. We just want to get to this one done first. Okay, so what does this do? I'm glad I'm actually doing all this stuff, because this will make auto deconstruct more resilient and verbose, which is always a good thing. What did you generate here? What? Oh, Tesla, that big? No, it can't be that big. It's just funny because it did that. It's like, whatever. Okay, let's put this in here. You come over here, A and plus place. I said replace all. Why are you? Here's a plus. Replace it with nothing. What? Oh, I was doing the wrong keystroke. Whatever. Too many tools and stuff and things. Okay, yeah. So this is wrong. It does do the thing here correctly. It does do these correctly as well. And so we're really actually close, which is good. Okay. We just need to put the T in here because it needs to say what the T is here. And the test extensions. Yeah, we want to flatten it. We do. Because what happens if you have a test of T and T? You'd have two test extension things here, and that would stink. Unless we do something in auto deconstruct to say, hey, if you did have something like a, for all the types that are in this namespace, we're going to put them in here. And then for all the types that have just the name of it, we're going to put them in here. And then we're going to put all the deconstruct methods in here. And so if you did have a T1, T2 scenario, then like this was T1, this was T2, and this was T1, T2, like that. That would just, so if you had a test with one generic and a test with two generics, it would just work. And then we don't have to do any flattening stuff. We just have to be a little bit smarter to say, when we are generating the partial class, we need to have all the types within that namespace, within this test extension that matches this. Because you could have, as you see here, non-generic and generic types that match the name, match the namespace, but have different generic type values. But this would be, I think, in a way, actually a little bit elegant, because I wouldn't have to like test of T and T, and all that other stuff. So, okay. So many things, but you got to think of these things. Okay. So back to this. What we do have is this. What we do have is this and this. That's all good. We just need to, if we do this right now, all we need is to put in the deconstruct method the generic names, right? So if we come up here and we go to the builder, we say null will enable namespace publish style. Now here is where we need to get var generic parameters, where we say if the type generic, we say type is it parameters. What we want to do is say string.join. No. We're going to say if type to parameters length. Is it length or count? It's greater than 0. Okay, then we're going to do something. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to do something. And that is actually going to go, that's not in the partial class. That needs to go here. Okay. And so actually, what it needs to be is, because I like putting things close to where they should be. Okay. And so if we don't have any, it's going to be string empty. If we do have some, what we want to do is a interpolated string. Well, we're going to have that in there. Okay. And then in here, what we want to say is string.join, separated by a comma, type parameters, select name. And Bob's your uncle. Of course, I know there's probably cases that I'm not handling here, but that should give us what we want. And so if I come back here, let's remove this, knowing that we have to come to that eventually. Okay, and let's put this in now, the test. And so what we're expecting here now is that. Now, did it do all the names? Nope. I thought it was doing that correctly. Whatever. Whatever. You are there. Okay. And so now we can say T here. And not only should this match, but it should be correct. Yeah. It's nice too is that by not doing all this flattened stuff is that we don't have to have like multiple files or anything like that. So we'll just have that file there, because there is a bug that we have to resolve in all our source generators to make the class name unique. All right, let's see what this does. And it passes. Yay. All right. Awesome. Constraints. God, why did I do this to myself? I'm going to have to grab all the constraints. And I wish SharpLab would come back. Please come back. You're still... It's Turkey Day. I don't know where that author of the tool lives. Given the name, I think he actually... He lives in Europe somewhere, I believe. I'm not sure about that. But they don't have Turkey Day like we do in America. So might be doing something today. All right, so what would we actually... I'm babbling. What would we actually want to see here? I believe what we would want is something like this, except we would have where T is class. And make sure that that is also constrained to the things that it needs to be constrained to. And it won't. This will fail because I know we're not putting in constraints. Okay. But this should be a relatively simple thing to do. I laugh at myself because I'm like, relatively simple. What are you, nuts, Jason? Nothing is ever relatively simple. I bet it's missing that one line. Yep. Okay. So hold on. Let me go search stuff in rocks here. Constraints. Where, oh, where in rocks? Come on. I could open up rocks, but, and that'd be a lot. Extensions. I think the name type symbol, no. Is it symbol extensions? Does that get all the constraints? No, not that one. Please remember where you were. Good. So it wasn't symbol. Type symbol? Question mark? Maybe? I don't know. Is pointer, contain diagnostics, namespaces, so many things. Mockable, yeah, we don't care about that. Mockable methods. Yeah, Jesus. It's so long. Oh my God. That's so bad. Okay, we don't. Hold on. I'm going to pause for a second and find this because I know I have a way to say get constraints. I just don't remember exactly where it is in rocks. So give me a second. Okay, I found where it does this, but it's doing it on a method, which, given what rocks does, make sense. Okay, because you can't mock a open generic. So it's basically about the method. Same thing that would be about us for the types. So this basically says for a given method, let's get all the constraints. And then you get a type parameter, and then type parameter symbol has a get constraints. Okay, so that gives you a list of all the constraints. Yeah, so it does a where and then all these things. And this method symbol I was looking at because that's what is called here. Okay. What do I mean by that? This is the extension methods on rocks that will add expectations. And so we have to call get constraints on it to make sure that we have the constraints on the extension method correctly. Okay. And we have this extension constraints. Why? Oh, is that just parameter? I don't know. I'm sure it's important, but whatever. So we need to have something in here that would say, do this for a type, get all the constraints, and then here we just get the type parameter symbol constraints. Okay. And if I remember right, for a given constraints is just a list of strings. And this is on a method. So we say where to immutable array. That's right, because when you get to here, it does a where the type, where T is all these constraints. Okay, and then it would be where T. So this gives you back a string. Okay. And that string may actually be, in fact, it's going to be an empty string. Okay. So that's why I filter it out here and say to immutable. So we kind of have to do the same thing here. I don't remember why I'm doing this, like the self and the type parameters. Like, I think is it closed or not? But we don't care about that. We only care about the type parameters. And so I think we can kind of do the same thing here. So first thing, we're going to grab this class and have type parameter symbol extensions because reasons. Okay. I type parameter symbol extensions. And then we're going to come up here and say, that's the name of this. I don't know why we need this in here. Okay. So just copied and pasted stuff because why not? And so do I want to say return string empty or not? I think what I'd really want to do is, if I remember, you have to be on a named type. I don't think, like if I said self here, does it have param? No, it's got to be a named type. Okay. I'm thinking actually we would do a name type because that's the only place we need it. The constraints of auto deconstruct are a little different. So we're going to call this I named type symbol extensions and change the name. There you go. So we're going to keep this, but we're going to say this is private. Okay. And so we're going to have an internal static class, static string get constraints. This I name type symbol self. Okay. And so if self type parameters length is equal to 0, that's the easy case. Return string dot empty. Yeah. Or what we could do is arguably, do we want to do a null or not? Because what's eventually going to have to call this is something that says, here's a string, if it's empty or not. I don't care. It's one way or the other, and it's turkey day. So we're going to say here now, what we need to build up is all of the, yeah, because if I think I look at it here, this just gives back all the constraints as an immutable array. I want to go one step further and say, take all the constraints I'm going to get from all the parameter symbols, put them into a list, and then say join them up with a space in between. Okay, so var constraints, we're going to say is a new list, a string for each var parameter itself. God, I love it when IntelliCode just nails it. It's like, thank you very much. Okay. And what we'll say here is that the most this is ever going to be is, like, we know it's only going to be of that size. It will probably be less, but that it won't go any farther than that. Okay. Var parameter constraints is equal to parameter get constraints. Okay. Because that's actually going to be that one. Okay. And we're going to make this return that. If, no, we're not. We're going to say if parameter constraints, come on, length is greater than 0, because that means we actually got something. We're going to say constraints dot add parameter constraints. Okay. And then we come down here and we say if constraints dot count. What's your problem here? Yes, count is greater than 0. Actually, we're going to say return constants.count is greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, then we're going to say string.join with a space in between all the constraints. Okay. Else string.empty. Okay. That means you did have parameters, but they had no constraints on them. Okay. So down here, we get the string empty. So yeah, if that's greater than 0 and that's greater than 0. So now we should be able to have all the constraints. Wonderful. Let's come back here and put on the deconstruct method. You jerk. I say you jerk because we want it to be right here on that line. And so there's no longer a need to have just a right line. But that's okay. That's fine. We can say, it's okay, Jason. Okay. I'm going to take that out, and we're going to make this back to that. Actually, I'm wondering, is there a way for it to say, if I wanted to go back to a literal, no, I want you, nope, you can't do that. Well, you suck. Okay. Can I say now, no, you can't. That sucks. Wait, just leave it the way it is. It can be that. That's perfectly fine. It's just going to write the line. Jason, that's okay. Okay. And then we're going to have an indent, writer, right line, no, right line of just that, just a dab. Okay. But here, what we're going to say is get var constraints is equal to type get constraints. Now, you are. Yes. Good. Yeah, good. Okay. And if constraints length is greater than 0, well, guess what we're going to do? We're going to put in another right line here. Well, what we're going to do is indent writer, indent plus plus, and then we're going to make sure that we come back, indent writer, indent minus minus, and then we're going to say right line of constraints. And why would we have to two string it? It is actually a string, right? Yeah. And wait a minute. Why would this be coming back? Yeah, it should just be like, why is a question mark there? I'm telling you it's returning a string. So why would you, I don't get it, whatever. Okay, so that should put the constraints there. If we come back to this now, does this work? And even if it does work, I got to make sure it didn't bust anything else. It passed. Quick test. Does it bust anything, at least in tests here? It might. No, it doesn't. Awesome. Okay. Really good progress on generics plus constraints. Commit. Push that. Let's come into the change log. I don't have the change log here. Come on, put the change log in, Jason. Add existing item. Yes. No, we want to put in and fixed generic types are now handled correctly. At least I think they are. I don't really know. And this was, issue 8. We already know that because, and 8 there. Okay, I will commit this. I'm going to come next episode. I'm going to clean things up here, make them a little bit more like correct-ish, I guess. There's a couple of other cases that I wanted to handle. What happens if, actually put integration tests around this. So there's more work to be done, but this is very good progress on this. So, yeah, probably want to put a test in here with multiple, to do. Let's just put quick to do multiple generics and multiple constraints on multiple generics. We will do that in the future. Thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.